Roshni Gajjar, and you are listening to Lift as We Rise, a podcast for purpose-driven strategies in business, sport, and in health. Thanks to all the nudges from you listeners to get back behind the mic. It's been a long absence. And where have I been, you may ask? Well, I think life happens and strategies must be executed. So it was really to turn my attention to business matters that arose, all that have ended positively. This week, StratAstute Consulting celebrated 10 years in business. That's a decade of support. And I'm just so grateful to all of you, to my clients, partners, over what's been a really turbulent 10 years. I tell you what, I love more what I do every day. And part of that is sharing these Lift as We Rise conversations with you. So today we're talking sporting STEM success from pupil to pinnacle. That's, of course, the focus of our Future One's not-for-profit organization. And I'm speaking today to Franco Chiocchetti, who is the founder of RaceOn, based in the US and in Germany. It's a trackside engineering consultancy and a partner to more than 50 race-winning motorsport teams across Dakar, Formula E, and DTM. Franco is a born South African from Port Elizabeth, and he's excelled in various project management roles across Formula E, DTM, Audi Sport. Before leaving SA, he was with BMW Motorsport and also with Opel Motorsport. From a STEM perspective, important to share that Franco is also deeply committed to nurturing the next generation of engineers and managers. And on that note, Franco, welcome, and it's really fantastic to be chatting to you today.
Thank you, Roshni. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Well, Franco and I had a bit of a preamble, and I know that as soon as I pressed record, the red lights went on, and I'm on a time limit here. So, Franco, let's dive into it. For some context, tell us about RaceOn and where you are in your journey as an entrepreneur and also a thought leader in high-performance motorsport engineering.
So RaceOn, the idea of RaceOn was in my head actually many, many years ago. But as everything in life, you need the right opportunity. 4 years ago, we got that opportunity and we started RaceOn. The goal of RaceOn was to offer an elite level of engineering. So to have specialists in various fields and to offer this specialist engineering support to customers. That's where we started, initially with 3 people. 4 years later, we're now 15 and still looking for some more growth, but slow and steady growth. That's a really important topic for me. You know, I don't want to extend too quickly and get myself into deep waters, let's say. Where we're going, I mean, it's a difficult one to say. You know, we have our business model. We're quite comfortable in our business model. But we'd also like to try some new things and also potentially give something back to motorsport, which has been my life for 27 years now. Yeah.
Franco, you have the platform. Share with us a little bit more about what RaceOn does and what it offers to the teams you work with.
So, like I said, we have specialist engineers in various fields. So from race engineers to performance engineers, we're pretty strong on the tire engineering side and tire modeling side. High voltage specialists, system engineers, simulator engineers. So we have a nice broad scope of everything that a professional race team needs. And we use these expertise to support our customers, whether that's specific engineer support or whether it's a package support. You know, we are open to basically customizing a solution for our customers. We're quite aware that each race team is different and has different needs and demands. So we try to supply what their needs require at that specific time. That's it in a nutshell, you know.
Franco, have you always been driven to motorsport? What got you from where you were in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, to where you are today as this really entrepreneur and solutions architect in your field?
Yes, I come from a bit of a racing family. My father was involved in some motorsport in his early life before he got married and had kids. And my family, my cousins are very successful in South African motorsport scene. So there was always motorsport around us, let's say. For me, myself, I was always interested and took any opportunity I could to be trackside, to support my cousins or just to watch events. And after my studies at UCT, I started working in industry, and I did that for 2 years. And I got an opportunity then. I was just in the right place at the right time. And I got an opportunity to chat to one of the team managers, which I knew from my hometown. And that got the ball rolling. You know, he offered me a position within their team. And that was at Opel Motorsport at the time. And I spent a year there and then a year at BMW. And then motorsport in South Africa collapsed with the whole withdrawal. I think Audi withdrew from the South African Touring Car Championship, and then it was just like everything fell apart. And I took the opportunity to apply for some positions in Europe. And on the 26th of February 2001, I boarded a flight to Europe with 2 suitcases and 2 small trunks, which I sent by ship. And that was all my possessions. And I came to Europe to follow my dream, you know, my passion at the time, which was motorsport. And I took an opportunity which, you know, I probably applied to 40 different teams, and I got a response from 3. The one was no, the other one was maybe, and the other one was yes. And I just jumped on it and took it. You know, you need to take the opportunities when they are there for you, because they don't come often. It's a small piece of advice I can give to many young people. You know, opportunities don't come every day. So before you turn down an opportunity, think harder about it, because maybe there won't be another one in the next 5 or 10 years.
So in the space you're sitting at now, from performance engineering into project management roles within Formula E, and now in this entrepreneurial CEO role, with companies across two countries, and serving clients across countries and across motorsport championships. Franco, what does strategy mean in the world of motorsport? And how would you say that is similar to or differs from strategy in the business context?
I think there's a lot of similarities, but it's very different. So similarities are you need to have a plan. You know, for any strategy you go into, you need to have a plan. Before you go to a race weekend, you've done your homework, you've done your pre-preparations, and you start a race generally with a plan of what your strategy in a race will be. It's not different in business. You know, you need to have a pre-preparation. You need to have an understanding where you want to go, where you want to position your brand, where do you want to put yourself on the market. The difference is in a race, you generally have the results pretty quickly. If it's a Formula One race, generally in 2 hours, you know where you are. If it's a Le Mans race, which is the longest motor race there is, in 24 hours, you know if your strategy worked or not. In business, that's quite different. In business, you may not know in the next 5 years if your strategies worked or not. So I think it's very important in a business perspective, you need to have a short, medium, and long-term strategy. It doesn't mean they need to be carved in stone, because you need to also be flexible enough to change with the times. I mean, we see now in this day and age, things are happening so quickly. A strategy that you designed 5 years ago is probably not even relevant anymore now. So, but I still think it's important to have those markers and to work towards those markers. Yeah.
Primarily, you're an engineer at heart and in mind and in thinking. What does strategy mean to an engineer? You mentioned strategy in motorsport, which is race specific. What goes through an engineer's mind then when developing that race strategy?
I mean, from an engineering perspective, you need to take into account all the different aspects. A lot of them are out of your control. So if we just go back to race strategy, you have weather influences, you have tarmac influences, track temperature influences, you have tire compound influences, you have, if you're having more than one driver, you have driver influences. And then there's, of course, these are things that you can potentially plan ahead for. But then, of course, you have influences which you haven't planned for, and it's difficult to plan for. For example, a yellow flag or a red flag, or a specific incident or a puncture. These are things which are spontaneous and you need to be able to react to. Engineers need to be able to make those, at least in motorsport, need to be able to make those split-second decisions. And generally, those split-second decisions are made with some sort of preparation in advance. We don't go into an event not having thought about what happens if a safety car comes here, or what happens if it starts to rain here. It's the middle of the night. If we take Nürburgring Nordschleife, for example, the green hell, it's the middle of the night in springtime, and it could be that your daytime temperature is 30 degrees, but in the night you're going to have 2 degrees with mist. That compound which worked at 30 degrees is not going to work at 2 degrees. So you need to just have preparation, and you need to take all the different factors into account.
You spoke earlier about taking the opportunities. We're speaking now about preparation and taking all the factors into account, which in my terminology I call risk and risk management. When you're looking at the influence of technology on race strategy, on strategy within motorsport today, what is the influence of technology on that in how you do it?
So there's a big influence now, especially within this new AI era. And for anyone who follows me on LinkedIn, I wrote a post not so long ago about AI and making decisions with artificial intelligence. I'm still old school, so I still believe that artificial intelligence is a great help, but I still also believe that the final decisions need to be taken by a human. And the reason for that is artificial intelligence is only as good as the information it's been fed and the model which is running it. There are so many factors which I've explained, external factors, which an AI can't see because we haven't had time to train it, especially during a race event. So the technology is there. There's a lot of support in making a decision, but it doesn't always mean the decision that the technology's made is the correct one for all the factors you need to take into account. So, for example, a driver might not be feeling well. The AI will be saying, stay out, finish the stint. But I can't tell the AI I can't stay out because my driver's not feeling well. So, I mean, it's a very primitive example, but it's the type of things which can happen on race weekends and especially in endurance racing. We need to be able to take all these factors into account. The AI can't do it. Not yet. Maybe the humanoid can. I'm not sure. Let's see. let's see.
So Franco, in the work RaceOn does, where technology has been applied on these types of performance decisions, what part does the experience that someone like yourself brings to the table play in the effectiveness of those decisions?
I mean, experience in any field of expertise is invaluable, and you don't even need to be the cleverest person in the room. But experience means you've seen something, you've heard something, you've seen someone do something which can bring you an advantage. And that's where I see experience, in a lot of the decisions we make. If I look at the young generation now coming out of school or university, they're pretty bright. I mean, they can do things which, when was I in university? 35 years ago, I could never have done. They are super clever people, but they don't have the experience. And they don't have that. I've seen that. I've heard that. They are missing that. And they need, it's very difficult to describe, but it's just invaluable. It's the same thing. For me, those people are my AI because they are supplying me information which I can't supply myself. I can't code, for example. I've never been a coder. So they are able to code tools which can give information very quickly, but they are lacking the experience to be able to make the final decision. Yeah, that's more or less my way of thinking at the moment. And I think it's in any business, it's in any industry. It's also about just being comfortable to make the decision. Some people may have the expertise, but they just don't feel confident and comfortable enough to say it because they're not sure if they're going to be blown down. And I think that's very important. That actually makes a healthy organization, being able to say what you think is right, even if it's wrong, because people know someone doesn't have the experience. So let them say what they think, let them be open, and then explain to them why it's not going to work. That's part of building up that experience. Sometimes I hear of organizations where people say, I think this wasn't right, but I didn't know who to tell. That can't be a healthy organization. Because if someone has the feeling that something's not right and they don't know who they can speak to about that, maybe they are right. Maybe it's not correct what they saw, but no one can fix it because no one knows about it. So, I worked with some very interesting people in my career. And one of them was actually one of our philosophies or one of our sayings in the team. See if they fix it. You see something, you tell someone, you make sure it gets fixed. And I think it's pretty simple, but I think this was one of the keys to a lot of the successes we had along the way. Yeah.
Franco, what you're saying is so real because in the consulting and the coaching work I do, how many times do I hear that? We've got all the knowledge, we've got all the know-how, but we don't feel that we have the opportunity to implement it. So the doors aren't opening. That's what I hear from the young people. And from the professionals who are in it, it's what you've shared, that the appetite for failure, in inverted commas, is zero. There's zero tolerance for that. And the anxiety that builds up around innovation projects particularly, and trying something new, but not quite having 100% guarantee that's going to work as intended, causes tremendous interference between potential and what requires to be executed. And I think what you're saying, if I heard you, is around creating that culture of enablement.
When you see it, another basic example, when you see a teacher in a classroom and the teacher asks a question and only 5 people put up their hand, why are the other 25 not putting up their hand? Are they scared to say the wrong answer? Shouldn't be scared to say something wrong, because they're in school. They are still learning.
Right. So today's conversation really is a focus on science, technology, engineering, maths, and bring the arts into it, so STEM. And STEM plays a critical role in the space you're playing in, certainly in engineering. Tell me from your perspective, Franco, what role does STEM play within motorsports now, and where do you see it going to in the future?
I mean, it's probably one of the biggest roles in motorsport. If we go back, why do we do motorsport? We do motorsport for marketing, for sales. People often forget that, but that's the reason why motorsport is there. We do motorsport to compete as well. Those sales and that marketing only works when you're successful. And you can only become successful with STEM. That's the background to what we're doing trackside. For sure, there's a lot of other building blocks, but without the science and technology engineering, you won't have a fast race car. And we need fast race cars to go racing. Generally, we are competitive people. If you're in the motorsport business, because you have a competitive mindset, often you see people, you play a game, like, I don't care if I win or lose. So no, I don't care if I win or lose either, but I have more fun winning. That competitive mindset, that's super important in motorsport. And this is actually what drives the whole STEM, in my opinion, in our industry.
Yeah, so in the work we did with the former project we were involved in, STEM racing, previously called F1 in schools, which we exited, one of the key learnings was in the South African context, there is this differentiation from educators and sponsors around STEM and robotics. And that I found pretty interesting because I understand STEM to be the foundation of robotics and certainly the future of industry. So in the work you do, in the team you have, how do those STEM skills play out? And how do STEM expertise support the performance objectives of your clients?
Yeah, so as I said, I mean, our engineering team, they are mainly specialists in their field.
Right.
So, I mean, they are coming with the high levels of engineering expertise and experience. STEM is the baseline of everything that we do. We are an engineering company. We employ engineers. So STEM is the background to everything. And, generally the engineers we have on board, they are not finishing their studies with a bachelor degree. Most of them are going to masters. Even we have one PhD on our payroll. So, we are supporting our customers just with these extreme high levels of expertise, coming through really from the education, but also from the experience. Been there, seen that, done that, Yeah.
No, thank you. Because I think when one's in school and grafting away at your math subjects and science subjects, you don't always see the practical implication of these things. And if I think back to my school days, it's strange how I excelled when I knew the application. And certain word sums where I saw no application, or at that stage I didn't see the application of geometry in the work I was interested in doing, I didn't do so well. I just did enough to pass, I guess. And so when you see that application and hear stories about what actually happens in a team, what actually happens in industry, it creates that awareness so that young people who are doing the theory right now can understand and find their why as to why they're doing it. And that's what I found so interesting and beautiful about that STEM racing program, because it really does pick the young, bright STEM minds to apply it into designing, making, testing, and racing this miniature car, and getting quite excited about it. So thanks for that. So Franco, you've got a team of 14. And we know that being technically smart and competent is one thing, but being effective within a team environment requires something else. Can you share with us what makes your team so successful in the high performance engineering space that they're working in?
Yeah, it's what I said, engineers like to do engineering things. And as long as we can keep our employees comfortable doing what they enjoy doing, working on cool projects, and not having to deal with all the frills around, we have quite a cool and comfortable space. Our team is very diverse. I leave everyone working from home. That's part of our model. We spend so much time working in motorsport, long hours, to get this work-life balance. Just leave the people to live where they want to live. At the end of the day, the work needs to be done. The customers need to be happy. And I think we've proved that we can work this model. I mean, a lot of people are pushing back on it because they're saying we're missing out the coffee chats. Well, we won a championship with a remote model during COVID time. It worked pretty well. So it's more or less about giving each individual the tools that each individual needs to do their job in the best way that they can. That's for me the main focus. And then, also we look at personalities. Personalities are super important in a motorsport environment. You can have very clever engineers, but if they can't work in a team, they're not very helpful to you. So it's all about that topic of putting people in a position to succeed. If you know someone can't work in a team, don't put him to work in a team. Put him to work on a project where he can focus as an individual on his own and find a good solution. So, I mean, that's what we try to do. We make people comfortable. We try to put them in positions where they can succeed. And by doing that, having the comfort, having the success, you automatically have the customer satisfaction. I think that's super important. Our team, we come together once a year, which has become quite an interesting event. Once a year, I bring everyone to a specific location, and we spend a weekend together, exchanging thoughts, ideas, conversations, drinking some beers, and just enjoying spending time together. And for me, this stimulates also creative thought. Of course, we need to be super aware of our customer IP, which is also part of the reason why our model is remote. We don't want the coffee machine chats because each engineer needs to protect his own customer IP, which we've proved that we can do it. We've been pretty successful, and we're working for a number of teams in one specific championship. And even these teams have extended our contract. So that shows to me that our model is correct and we are doing things in the right way. Our customers are happy.
Franco, that is incredible. So you guys are all working online. You meet once a year, and yet you are helping your customers win their championships outside
Absolutely.
of a think tank that is coordinated and office environment, while the rest of the world has all gone back to the office. What is the secret in that success?
It's mindset. It's mindset. Not everyone can do it. Some people that we interview, they say, I don't want to work in home office, which I can respect because it's not made for everyone. But if you can keep people comfortable and you can have them work, it also depends on the tasks at hand. If someone's a programmer and he's coding, the worst thing for them is the office environment because there's too many distractions. So it's really put people in a place where they can do their work in the best possible way. And we split this between home office, racetrack, and of course, sometimes we are also at our customers for specific meetings, for specific tasks, which we can't do remotely. But generally, if our customers allow it, we leave our people to work remotely.
This is really interesting. So for those captains of industry out there who are not hands-on leading STEM professionals, but their teams of STEM experts are growing, what advice can you share to them? What do STEM-minded people need to feel comfortable and connected and performing well in an environment?
I think the most important thing, what I already mentioned, STEM people like to have cool projects. They like to be challenged. But then I think what a lot of people forget is the human factor. We're an engineering company, yes, but we're in the business of people. So we need to look after our people. It's our biggest asset. If you lose someone, if a company loses an employee, to replace that employee is a massive burden. It's so difficult to find the right people and to find the right people to fill the gap that you have a seamless service. So the most important thing I can tell people is take care of, or leaders is take care of your people. Make sure your people are happy. Happy people don't look for other jobs. And I mean, it comes down also to salaries. Sometimes you get companies poaching people for extraordinary salaries. And I think that's just how the business is. But generally, people who are tech-minded don't leave just because of extraordinary salaries. There's a lot more to being happy in a job than pure financial. I mean, everyone's different, but if you're comfortable, if you're in a good environment, if you're working on a good project, I think these are things which bring commitment. And yeah.
Franco, you spoke earlier about giving these professionals an opportunity and the fact that experience is an essential ingredient for their success in the future. You also shared with me earlier that you at RaceOn received 2,000 applicants for jobs. You filtered 1,600 and landed up with a short list of 400. And I'm not sure how many of those you appointed. Of those you appointed, Franco, what criteria did you apply? So what made you say these 5 or 10 people are the ones we want to work within our team?
So as we are working for customers and consulting, for us, it's very difficult to work with junior engineers because it comes to that experience again. I can't have a junior engineer at a customer supplying a high level of expertise. So we're a little bit limited, and I had a lot of interns apply, and I had to turn them down and just say to them, at the moment we are still a startup. We're not mature enough for that yet. But I think it's very important. I used the analogy the other day of compounding interest in the finance world. You start up saving a little bit, but with time it becomes a lot. And I think this is the same for young, aspiring engineers. Make sure that when you start your first job, that you have someone to learn from. Because if you're learning from your own research or you're learning by doing, you're going to be left behind by those who are rubbing shoulders with the experience and being taught by a mentor. And this is where I see something pretty interesting in mentorship. How do you want to be ahead of those left and right of you? How do you want to have call it an unfair advantage if you want. How do you want to have the unfair advantage? And that is really by having someone who can show you the right way, not letting you often say, yeah, let them touch the hot stove and then they'll learn it's hot and won't do it again. That's correct. But how much more valuable is it not to burn yourself, but really just to know that that's hot because someone told me that's hot, and basically leech off a mentor? I think that is super interesting. And I think that is something which is not valued enough in this industry.
I'd absolutely support that, Franco. And I'm doing some work with women in motorsport on mentorship at the moment. And the power of that process, not only for the mentee, but for the mentor, is incredible. And, adding to your principle of there needs to be more investment in this. It's the interesting concept of using mentorship as an intergenerational bridge between those who've got the experience and the scars to show for it, and these bright young minds that are coming into it and enabling and unlocking that experience so that there's sustainability in that process itself. Thanks very much for sharing that, Franco. We turn our attention then to the future. So we're seeing motorsport competitiveness, boundaries being pushed on innovation in that aspect. And underpinning high performance is always the safety aspect in motorsport and also enjoyment of motorsport and the world of working. And you, I guess, have experiences for more than 2 decades in the work you're doing in. Franco, I'm wondering, what does this rapid pace of innovation and tech investment, what does it mean to the future of an industry like motorsport? Share with us some of your thoughts.
The question is, motorsport was normally the leader. Things were happening in motorsport and then going across to industry. I feel industry is starting to catch up and things are starting to happen in industry which motorsport is lagging in. You spoke earlier about robotics. AI is big in motorsport. We have masses of data in motorsport. So having AI filter out data, what's good data, what's bad data, what's important to take a look at, and what's less important. This is already, I would say, quite advanced. But on the robotics side, if you look at autonomous driving, it's not allowed in Europe at the moment, I believe. But if you look at the US, a lot of people are driving Teslas, which are driving themselves. We now have a racing series, which is about autonomous driving, which is also quite interesting. But at the moment, the motorsport is catching up to industry in that respect. So from being an industry leader, there are still topics that we will be leading on for sure in the motorsport industry. But I think we're starting to learn more and more from industry to motorsport than only the other way around.
That's really interesting. So it's almost a case of, in the future, I hear you saying, Motorsport will no longer remain this high performance center of excellence in isolation. There's more fluidity between what happens outside of motorsport and what's starting to happen inside of it from an innovation perspective. Am I hearing you correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. Motorsport will bring the efficiency. I mean, we've seen that with Formula E and electric powertrains. I mean, when we started almost 12 years ago with Formula E, the efficiency of the powertrain was probably at 92%, whereas now probably up to 96, 97, 98. I mean, we shouldn't speak too much of the details because it's related to individual IP, but these are the ranges that racing teams are looking at now, and this was driven by racing. You know, in the real world, the efficiency of a power unit or electric power unit is not so important as what it is when you're energy limited on a racetrack. So I think each one will find their own niche, and I think each one is as important for the other one.
You have deep experience in Formula E. You mentioned the margin gains in Formula E from innovation. The other part of my question was around sustaining this enjoyment of sport. With all this tech and innovation added to it, and the seasons getting longer, and these poor teams working very, very long hours, including yourself, Franco, what is happening to the enjoyment of motorsport for people in it? What are you seeing?
It gets tougher and tougher. I mean, you see it. More and more people are wanting to go back to the better quality of life. The cliche work-life balance, but in motorsport, it's really been work, and a bit of life. And sure, we get to travel the world and we get to see a lot of places. But I mean, I've been to many countries where I've only seen the airport, the hotel, and the racetrack. And it's getting tougher. People are not always willing to do these additional hours and additional sacrifices. I mean, you either love it or you don't. I love being trackside. I love the competition. I love the family atmosphere. And that's important as well. You have some championships where you have this family type atmosphere where everyone knows everyone and talks to everyone. You have others where you wouldn't dare to be seen talking to another team. So I think that's super important. At the end, it's what I said from the beginning. It's the human factor. We need to keep the human factor. We're not machines, not yet. And we shouldn't be treated like machines. And I think a lot of teams, especially in the lower classes, you see that a lot, where people are completely overworked because of lack of resources, lack of proper structure, lack of procedure, which brings a lot of additional workload onto a few individuals. And at one stage, you will not enjoy it. The enjoyment from motorsport comes from the competition, from the highs, from the lows. I mean, you get such a adrenaline rush when you win a race, and you get such a deep when you make a mistake and you don't succeed. So these highs and lows, these plays on the emotions is really what keeps things going. But people need to have the time also to experience those. I've seen teams win championships. Winning a championship is not easy. Not many teams win championships. And I've seen teams win championships and not do one single celebration. They will have a short celebration at the podium, and then they will just get on with a normal pack-up and stuff. And I can say, I mean, I've been involved in a few teams and we've won a lot of championships, but I can really say that we celebrated every single one. And this is then a small reward for the hard work that you've put in. Emotions, human factor, should not be forgotten. And sometimes it's easy. But often it's forgotten. Yeah.
Franco, that is so important, because when the pace is high and the pressure is high and the championship is getting tighter in business or in sport, I often find that the executives get further and further away from the people, because they're spending longer and longer hours in the boardroom or in the offices, and the disconnect starts. And what you're saying is vitally important. It's really carving time out to say, hey, we've achieved our goals. Well done. Pat on the back. Let's celebrate somewhere outside of the office and just be ourselves so that we can get back into it. Thanks for sharing that.
I mean, a bit of a cartoon comes into mind, which I've seen a few times on LinkedIn, between leader and manager, where you have the manager sitting in the chariot at the back with the people pulling him along and he's dictating where to go. Or you have the leader at the front pulling the rope with all the people following. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. There's a difference between leading by example and dictating.
And that's the change I would foresee going forward. Whereas the one is a push factor, you're using the stick approach, and the other is a pull factor, you're the servant leader.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the future, it's almost this organic flow of that round circle. We're all in it this together. We're a team. Bring your strengths into it, and how can we really push forward? And from young people that I have the privilege to work with, it's interesting to see the world of work from their lens. They're used to speaking to people directly using social media. They're no longer speaking to executive assistants and going via front desks. They want to go straight to the person they want to speak to. And those of us who were born in that kind of quite a structured hierarchy of communication and engagement with our elders or authority or leaders, take things for granted that that's how it is. And so, once again, on this intergenerational perspective, whether in motorsport or outside, how can we keep an open mind about what is required and what no longer serves us?
Absolutely.
Franco, 2 decades later, in the international world of motorsport, kudos to you. I'm sure it was not an easy journey. Share with us some of your challenges and how did you navigate these to get to where you are today?
Wow. There's been so many. I mean, the biggest challenges is making decisions, life-changing decisions. Spoke about it a little bit earlier, and some of the biggest advice I can give to people is follow your dream, follow the direction that you believe is right. But when you get to tough decisions, treat it like a trip. Keep going around and around until you know which is the right exit to take. But when you take the exit, don't look back. Just keep full steam ahead to the direction which you believe is the right one. And this is a philosophy which I've used through my career. And I mean, sometimes you make a wrong decision, but it's important firstly to make a decision. Some people can't do that. So I think that's the first step, be bold, make a decision, follow it as long as the road leads in that direction, and don't look back. And most likely you're going to get to another traffic circle with the next challenge. That's how life is. Yeah. I mean, trackside, we've had loads of challenges. Investigations, disqualifications. I mean, there's too many to even mention, but probably if it can happen, it's happened. Yeah.
Franco, you're on the other side now. You've made those decisions and you've navigated those traffic circles. One of those decisions for you would have been to leave the shores of this gorgeous country, South Africa, that warms many hearts, and to follow your passion of being where you are today. How did you make that decision?
I think it was a bit easier than most people think, because at the time, as I said, after my 2 years in motorsport, the South African motorsport scene more or less collapsed. And I just felt like I had unfinished business. I had learned so much in 2 years, but for sure nowhere near enough. And I had the opportunity at that time to go back into industry. I was offered a job in industry, actually by the car manufacturer. And I turned it down because I just felt I had unfinished business. I mean, I was born and grew up in South Africa, but I also had an Italian passport, which made it for sure a lot easier because I was able to work in the EU. But yeah, for me, it was the unfinished business topic. At that time, my dream was always, I was a huge Ferrari fan, of course, being a motorsport enthusiast and having some Italian blood. My goal was to be at Ferrari one day. I mean, I never achieved that. At some stage in my life, that wasn't the goal anymore. The goalpost changed, but it was pretty easy for me to make the decision. They're not always that easy. It's also sacrifices. South Africa is a beautiful country. South Africa has a fantastic lifestyle, which is very different to Europe. I think you have a much more comfortable life, much more sociable life in South Africa than in Europe. So, and of course, family. Most of my family was still in South Africa at the time. So there were many sacrifices that I needed to make. But when you have a clear goal, when you have a clear direction, and that's why I say, if you take that exit, keep following it. Because if your direction's clear, it's easier to do the sacrifices and to make the decisions.
Franco, we're both from South Africa, and hence we're using the South African example. But in the people I've worked with within motorsport, particularly, those who are wanting to leave Brazil to go and race in Europe, for example, or Formula One performance engineers who come from other parts of the world who have to be EU based. It's not only South Africans who battle, they really miss home and miss family. And it comes down to what you're saying. It's, staying absolutely focused on that goal and knowing that this is really what you want to do and apply your passion to.
Absolutely.
So, Franco, for those bright young STEM minds in South Africa today who'd love to work in the world of motorsport or anything similar, what advice do you have for them?
I have a lot. How much time do you have?
What would be your golden nugget?
I mean, there's a couple of things. The one is, I've said already, follow your dream. It's always easier to work towards a goal. If you're swimming through murky water, it's very difficult to find your destination. But if you have clear water, if your goal is clear, it's much easier to find your destination. So first thing I would say is have a clear goal, what you want to achieve. And don't give up till you achieve it. That's what goals are there for. You don't have a goal to just give it up for no particular reason. I mean, I said my goalposts changed. I had reasons for that, and I was happy with that change. But I was still going in more or less the same direction. So I think that's super important. The other thing, find a mentor. Find someone you can ask questions to. Find someone you can embarrass yourself in front of with a stupid question. Often we say there is no stupid question. There's only the stupidity of not asking a question. So have a mentor, have someone who can guide you, because competition is tough. And in this day and age, there's so many opportunities. To put it in perspective, when I started university, we didn't even have computers. There are so many opportunities at the moment to get information. You can get lost in this information minefield. So having a mentor, someone to point you in the right direction, I think is invaluable. Those are the two biggest advice I can give to people.
Well, thank you, Franco, just from what you've achieved and where you are at now, and just sharing this conversation with you. It's been such a privilege and inspirational, me having spoken to you. And I trust that it's going to inspire, the younger people listening and captains of industry who are leading STEM industry. So thank you very, very much for that, Franco, and keep fueling the passion.
Thank you, Roshni. It's been a pleasure.
So wherever you are in the world, thank you for listening in. And also thank you so much for remaining subscribed while I was doing my stuff over the last year. Really appreciated. You can go and read more about the Future One's STEM initiatives on the website. You can also check out StratAstute Consulting's work in strategy, sports consulting, and also coaching. And if you'd like to hear more about a particular success story or thought leadership, send us an email and share those details, and we'll see what we can do. So you can find more details on www.stratastute.co.za. Until next time, lift as we rise so that with purpose, we can thrive. Take care and bye-bye.